I'm joined today by Kert Davies, who's director of the Climate Investigation Center. It's a research group that works to expose the anti-environmental movement, including those that try to stall and block policy solutions to climate change. Kurt, you were involved in this extraordinary investigation into Willie Soon and the way in which climate denial is funded. Before we talk specifically about that investigation, talk to us generally about why, in spite of the fact that the overwhelming mountain of scientific evidence points to humans impacting the climate on Earth, we still see so many of the same few climate skeptics cited time after time by the deniers. Why are we seeing that?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. And this is one of my favorite subjects, and I kind of obsess about the answer to your question. So I could go on for hours, but we don't have that much time. The basic thing is that they know these fossil fuel corporations who don't want us to get down and solve climate change, to start implementing, real energy policy that cuts out fossil fuels, basically. They know that science is the engine that drives policy along, that if we are not certain about whether the Hudson River is polluted, we won't do anything about it. If we're not certain that climate change is caused by fossil fuel burning, we won't do anything about it. So they've funded their own echo chamber. They've sort of cultivated people who will say things that the companies themselves can't be caught dead saying. And Willie Soon is a perfect example of this. He and his ally there at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, Sally Baliunas, who retired suddenly in 2009, for years have denied the ozone hole. They've denied climate change. They say it's caused by sunspots or variations in the sun. The warming we're seeing today is caused by something else. And Exxon funded them. The Koch Foundation funded them. American Petroleum Institute, Southern Company, a huge utility based in Georgia, all funded Willie Soon to put this counter narrative out that the science is uncertain or that there are other things to explain the warming that we're experiencing.
Talk to us a little bit about, let's stick with Willie Soon because it's just a good example, a microcosm of so much of what's going on. Willie
Right.
Soon, a solar physicist, as you mentioned, at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He claims all of the different things you talked about, including changes in temperature due merely to sunspots, just sort of the natural cyclical reality of the sun. How is he funded specifically? In other words, we might have this idea in our heads that someone comes to him and says, listen, Willie, we need you to say these things. Here's some money. But that's not really the way it actually happens.
No, no, in fact, it's more complicated than that. He actually believes what he's saying. It's not like they are literally manufacturing doubt, or they are, finding a scientist and say, go lie for us. They have found scientists that think climate change isn't real. And then they have given them a megaphone and they've given them funding. If you go back to a document that was leaked in 1998, there, now I'm getting some echo. I'm sorry. Good on your end?
Yeah, we're fine.
Oh, apologize. So, in 1998, there was a document that was leaked to the New York Times that showed a multi-million-dollar plan to funnel money from industry trade associations through front groups to basically media train scientists and give them venues to talk, to insert uncertainty into the dialogue. And they explicitly say victory will be achieved when media, legislators, even science teachers believe there is uncertainty. Willie Soon was a direct conduit where they sent money straight to his institution to pay for his research, and the payback was Willie Soon publishing peer-reviewed literature in the scientific journals that would generate some uncertainty. So it's sort of a feeder system that they developed, a network of front groups being libertarian, anti-environmental, anti-regulatory organizations, and trade associations like the American Petroleum Institute. They run money through those groups and they prop up these scientists in the public dialogue. So there are
Right. It
many
would
of
be
them.
it would be sort of too obvious if they just say, "Hey, we want you to say these things that you may not believe." The smarter way to go about it is fine, if only this tiny percentage share our views, let's exclusively fund those and make them prominent and known.
That's exactly right. And what's fantastic about this new Exxon investigation that's rolled out over the past couple of months through a group called Inside Climate News, an online news source on climate change, and a group at Columbia School of Journalism working with the LA Times, they both have revealed old Exxon documents showing that Exxon knew much more about climate science than we previously knew they did. And then they went on to fund people like Willie Soon. In one case, there's a document from the mid 90s where mobile oil scientists are briefing the entire industrial coalition, the Global Climate Coalition, which was this front group set up to block the Kyoto Protocol and block the UN process that's happening right now in Paris. They had a whole coalition to stop that. Their own scientists said arguments like Willie Soon's sunspots, arguments that there's a divergence in the temperature record. They basically knock down each of those arguments and say they really don't hold water to explain the warming that we're seeing. And then they didn't include that in the final draft that went public of that document. So this private conversation inside the industrial bloc, they knew these arguments didn't hold water. Exxon goes on to promote those same arguments in years subsequent.
Let me ask you a little bit, Kert, and we're speaking with Kert Davies, director of the Climate Investigation Center. Increasingly, we are seeing from the sort of the usual suspects, the talking point touted that, hey, everything's fine as far as ice melt, that we now see more ice than ever in the Arctic, for example. Have you investigated that? What's going on with that, the resurgence of that talking point that we're hearing lately?
Well, first of all, it's one of the biggest calamities, the meltdown of the Greenland ice sheet and West Antarctic ice sheets. If they proceed as they are right now, we are in for a lot more sea level rise. It's where most of the ice that's above sea level on Earth is being stored right now. If all that melts, we get like 30 feet of sea level rise. It's a big deal. So cities like New York, Miami, Philadelphia, others are buried. So that's the reason that they don't want that to be true, or don't want that the uptake of that risk to be seen in the public dialogue. The resurgence is because it's getting worse, and also because there is increased press attention to it, and so the counter narrative is rising up.
And talk a little bit about where, they claim to have science on their side, right? They claim to say, hey, if we just look at the volume of this ice, we have actually seen an increase. And of course, what they would like to see follow from that is, if there's more ice, clearly things aren't warming, everything's fine, look in the other direction.
That's right. And there is no evidence that that is occurring in the north. In Antarctica, there was a study just a little while ago that showed more snowfall than they had previously measured in other parts of Antarctica that were adding ice incrementally, but the scientists concluded it wouldn't balance out the ice that's being lost off of the West Antarctic ice sheet, which is really the biggest chunk that's falling into the ocean on a regular basis. So ice is a big question. You could call it an uncertainty, but all the news is bad. So it's not the best way to think about this is the deniers characterize it as a house of cards argument, that if one piece of the scientific puzzle is missing, everything falls away. It's not true. The better way to look at it is like a giant jigsaw puzzle. And yes, in all science, there is continuing exploration and fine point certainty. But the bigger the picture gets, you sort of know the picture before you're done the puzzle, is the way to look at it. You know, this is a picture of a pretty grim scene. Adding the other pieces are not going to make that scene into some beautiful sunrise. So the argument that we are missing information and that's a reason not to act is completely destructive.
Right, and not to mention that even if scientists are wrong about 80% of their predictions, just if they're right on 20%, we've still got a lot of stuff to figure out, and you're absolutely spot on with that. We've been speaking with Kert Davies, director of the Climate Investigation Center. Kert, thanks so much for talking to us and for your investigations.
Hey, great. Anytime. Thank you.